Listen up, because this might be the most important thing you hear today. You are not here to make everyone else comfortable at the expense of your own happiness. You are not a doormat. You are not a backup plan. You are not the one who bends, breaks, and sacrifices while everyone else thrives. So why do you keep saying yes when you mean no? Why do you keep over-apologizing, over-explaining, and over-giving to people who don't even appreciate it? Because you've been taught that being nice makes you valuable, that if you just smile, accommodate, and put yourself last, people will love you. But let's be honest, where has that gotten you? You're exhausted, you're resentful, and deep down, you know it's not working. Stop putting everyone else's needs above your own. Stop saying yes when you want to say no. Stop bending over backward to make sure everyone around you is happy while you're left exhausted, frustrated, and unseen. You've spent years believing that being agreeable, accommodating, and easygoing will make people love you. But let's be honest, has it worked? Has putting yourself last earned you the respect, love, and fulfillment you deserve? Or has it just made you the go-to person for favors, the one who never complains, the one who is expected to adjust, compromise, and carry the emotional weight of every relationship in your life? You are not here to be a people-pleasing machine. You are not responsible for making sure everyone else is comfortable while you're suffering in silence. You have a voice, you have needs, and you have every right to put yourself first without feeling guilty about it. The biggest mistake you've been making is believing that saying no will make people dislike you, that standing up for yourself will make you difficult, that refusing to accommodate someone else's demands will make you selfish. But the truth is, the more you give without limits, the more people will take without appreciation. Think about it. How many times have you agreed to something just because you didn't want to disappoint someone? How many times have you forced a smile when you were exhausted? Held back your real feelings because you didn't want to come across as rude, or went along with plans you didn't want to be a part of just to keep the peace? And where did that get you? Did anyone stop to ask what you wanted? Did anyone go out of their way to make sure you were happy? Probably not, because when you train people to believe that you'll always say yes, that you'll always be the one who adjusts, they stop considering your needs altogether. It's time to break this cycle. Being the nice girl has not brought you peace. It has made you invisible. You're always there for others, but who's there for you? You drop everything when someone needs you, but when was the last time someone showed up for you in the same way? If the answer is rarely or never, then it's time to wake up. The world does not reward those who sacrifice themselves for the comfort of others. The world respects those who respect themselves. When you stop being the nice girl, you stop living for other people's approval. You stop letting the fear of disappointing others dictate your choices. You stop allowing guilt to push you into commitments you don't want. You realize that your needs matter just as much as everyone else's, and that your voice is just as important as the voices of those who have been drowning you out. The people who truly love and respect you will never abandon you just because you start setting boundaries. And the ones who do, they were only benefiting from your silence and compliance. So no, you are not mean for saying no. You are not selfish for prioritizing yourself. You are not rude for refusing to be available 24/7. You are simply taking back your power. You are choosing yourself for once, and that is not something to apologize for. Stop being the nice girl who lets people walk all over her because she's too afraid to set boundaries. Stop saying it's okay when it's not. Stop making excuses for people who repeatedly disrespect you. Stop convincing yourself that being agreeable is the only way to keep the peace. It's not peace if you're the only one sacrificing for it. If you've spent your life putting other people's needs before your own, constantly adjusting to keep them happy, then let me tell you something. You are not being kind. You are being taken for granted. And the more you allow it, the worse it gets. Every time you ignore your gut feeling and let someone push past your limits, you're teaching them that your boundaries don't matter. Every time you bite your tongue instead of speaking up, you're training them to keep expecting your silence. Every time you let someone's bad behavior slide because you don't want to be seen as difficult, you're giving them permission to keep treating you the same way. Boundaries are not selfish. They are necessary. They are the difference between being respected and being used. They are what separate the women who live on their own terms from the ones who live constantly trying to please others. You need to understand this. People will only treat you as well as you demand to be treated. If you keep accepting the bare minimum, that's all you'll ever get. If you keep saying yes to things that drain you, people will keep asking. If you keep overextending yourself for people who don't reciprocate, they will continue taking advantage of you. The way you allow others to treat you is a direct reflection of how much you value yourself. And if you don't value yourself enough to say no, no one else will either. Let's talk about what happens when you don't set boundaries. You become the person everyone depends on, but no one considers. You become the friend, the partner, the coworker who is always available, always accommodating, always putting herself last. And at first you might think that's a good thing. You might believe that it makes you a good person, that it makes people appreciate you more. But in reality, all it does is make them expect more from you without ever giving anything in return. You start to feel exhausted, resentful, and unseen. And the worst part? You have no one to blame but yourself, because you never enforced the boundaries you so desperately needed. Now, here's the hard truth. When you first start setting boundaries, people won't like it. They are used to you being the nice girl who always says yes, who never pushes back, who makes everything easy for them. So when you start saying, no, I can't do that, that doesn't work for me, or I'm not comfortable with this, they might get upset. They might call you selfish, dramatic, or difficult, and that's fine. Let them. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Their discomfort is not your problem. The only people who get upset when you set boundaries are the ones who benefited from you having none. When you stop being the nice girl and start enforcing your boundaries, you finally take control of your life. You start surrounding yourself with people who respect your time, your energy, and your worth. You stop feeling drained and start feeling empowered. You no longer let guilt dictate your decisions. You finally realize that saying no to others is really saying yes to yourself. And that is the most powerful thing you can do. Stop being the nice girl who shrinks herself to make others comfortable. Stop waiting for permission to take up space, to speak up, to be seen, to go after what you want. You are not put on this earth to be small, to be quiet, or to blend into the background while everyone else takes center stage. You do not need approval to exist fully, to express yourself, or to chase your ambition. If you've been waiting for someone to tell you that it's okay to be bold, confident, and unapologetically yourself, consider this your wake-up call. Too many women spend their lives making themselves smaller because they've been conditioned to believe that taking up space is selfish, that being confident is arrogant, that having a strong opinion is intimidating. They lower their voices, dim their light, and play it safe, hoping that by doing so, they'll be liked, accepted, and respected. But here's the truth. People don't respect those who constantly minimize themselves. People respect those who own who they are without hesitation. Think about the times you held yourself back, the times you didn't speak up in a meeting because you didn't want to come across as aggressive, the times you didn't share your ideas because you were afraid they weren't good enough, the times you apologized for things that didn't even require an apology, the times you let someone interrupt you, talk over you, dismiss your feelings, and you just smiled and let it slide. And why? Because you didn't want to make waves. Because you didn't want to be seen as difficult. Because you thought that if you stayed in your lane and didn't demand too much, people would appreciate you more. But what has that mindset given you? Has it brought you the success, the love, the confidence, or the fulfillment you crave? Or has it left you feeling overlooked, unheard, and undervalued? The world doesn't reward people who play small. It rewards those who know their worth, who show up fully, and who refuse to make themselves invisible for the sake of others' comfort. It's time to stop waiting for permission to exist. No one is going to hand you confidence. No one is going to invite you to take up space. You have to claim it. You have to walk into a room and own it. You have to stop second-guessing your abilities and start trusting that you are capable, intelligent, and worthy of everything you desire. Confidence is not something you are given. It is something you decide to have. You have to decide right now that you are done making yourself small. The moment you stop seeking approval and start embracing who you are, everything changes. You start speaking with conviction. You start chasing your goals with the kind of determination that makes people pay attention. You stop apologizing for existing, for having opinions, for taking up space. And you start realizing that the people who truly value you will never ask you to be less than who you are. The world doesn't need more women who shrink themselves. It needs women who stand tall, speak up, and own their power without hesitation. So take up space. Use your voice. Step into the version of yourself that you were always meant to be. Stop being the nice girl who carries unnecessary guilt for choosing herself. Stop feeling bad for saying no, for putting yourself first, for prioritizing your happiness, your peace, and your well-being. You are not responsible for managing everyone else's emotions. You are not obligated to meet every expectation, fulfill every request, or sacrifice yourself just to keep others happy. The guilt you feel when you set boundaries, when you speak your truth, when you stand up for yourself, that guilt is not real. It is a learned response, a product of years of conditioning that told you that being a good girl means always accommodating, always agreeing, always giving more than you receive. Think about how many times you've ignored your own needs just to avoid feeling guilty. You stayed in situations that made you unhappy because you didn't want to disappoint anyone. You put in extra hours at work because you didn't want to seem unhelpful. You kept friendships alive even when they drained you because you didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. You went to events you didn't want to go to, agreed to tasks you didn't want to do, said yes when every fiber of your being was screaming no. And for what? So that other people wouldn't be upset with you? So that you wouldn't feel like you were letting someone down? That guilt you carry is nothing more than fear in disguise. Fear that if you choose yourself, people will think you're selfish. Fear that if you stop bending over backward for others, they will walk away. But here's the truth. If someone only values you when you're sacrificing yourself for them, they don't truly care about you. They care about what you do for them. And if saying no to them makes them angry, that says more about them than it does about you. Healthy relationships, whether they're friendships, family, or work, do not require you to abandon yourself to keep them intact. The guilt you feel is a habit, and like any habit, it can be broken. The next time you start to feel guilty for prioritizing yourself, ask yourself this: would the person I'm saying no to feel guilty if the roles were reversed? If you had to cancel plans because you needed rest, would they do the same without hesitation? If you stopped doing favors for them, would they stop feeling entitled to your time and energy? More often than not, the answer is no. And that realization should tell you everything you need to know. You have been conditioned to believe that taking care of yourself is selfish. But in reality, it is necessary. When you stop overextending yourself for others, you gain the energy and space to focus on your own goals, your own happiness, and your own success. You start showing up as the best version of yourself, not the tired, overworked, stretched, thin version that everyone else has come to expect. And here's the most powerful thing that happens when you stop feeling guilty for choosing yourself. You start surrounding yourself with people who respect you for it. You attract relationships where mutual respect exists, where your needs are valued, where you are seen as an equal rather than just a convenient source of support. Guilt has no place in a life that is lived on your own terms. You are not here to be everything for everyone at the expense of yourself. The only person you owe anything to is yourself. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to put yourself first. You are allowed to live without guilt weighing you down. And once you let go of that guilt, you become unstoppable. Stop believing that if you're just agreeable enough, quiet enough, or selfless enough, people will appreciate you. Being nice is not the same as being valued. Being easygoing is not the same as being respected. You have spent too much of your life believing that if you never make waves, never cause conflict, never stand your ground, people will see your worth. But what has that gotten you? Are you being heard? Are your needs being met? Or are you the one people turn to only when they need something, the one who is easy to overlook, the one who is expected to adjust, to accept, to compromise every single time? Respect is not given to those who make themselves small to please others. Respect is given to those who know their worth and refuse to settle for anything less. The reason you keep feeling exhausted, unappreciated, and taken for granted is because you have spent too much time prioritizing being nice over being respected. You are so afraid of being disliked that you tolerate treatment that you should have shut down a long time ago. You let people talk over you. You let them take credit for your ideas. You let them assume you'll always be available, always willing, always ready to drop everything for them. And every time you do this, you reinforce the belief that your needs are secondary. Think about the women you admire, the ones who walk into a room and command attention. Are they the ones who apologize for existing? Are they the ones who hesitate before speaking? Are they the ones who put everyone else's needs above their own? No. They are the ones who demand respect because they give themselves respect first. They are the ones who do not tolerate disrespect, who do not waste time trying to be liked by people who do not matter. They are the ones who stand firm, who enforce their boundaries, who own their power unapologetically. You need to start valuing yourself in the same way. Stop apologizing when you haven't done anything wrong. Stop explaining yourself to people who aren't owed an explanation. Stop saying yes just because you're afraid of upsetting someone. If someone only likes you when you are bending over backward for them, that is not respect. That is convenience. If someone gets mad at you for asserting yourself, they never respected you in the first place. People who truly respect you will not punish you for standing up for yourself. They will not be offended when you say no. They will not manipulate you into thinking that prioritizing yourself is selfish. You don't have to be rude to be respected. You just have to be firm. You have to know when to walk away. You have to be willing to risk being disliked by the wrong people in order to be valued by the right ones. When you stop basing your worth on how nice you are and start demanding respect, your entire life changes. You attract better friendships, better opportunities, and better relationships. You no longer waste energy on people who only want you around because you're easy to take advantage of. Respect starts with you. If you don't respect yourself, no one else will. If you don't value your own time, others won't either. If you don't enforce your boundaries, people will continue to push them. Being nice is not a weakness, but when it comes at the cost of your self-worth, it stops being kindness and starts being self-sabotage. The world does not reward the woman who is the easiest to get along with. It rewards the one who knows her worth and refuses to accept anything less than what she deserves. Stop being the nice girl who holds herself back out of fear of what others might think. Stop toning yourself down, waiting for the right moment or seeking approval before stepping into your power. You were not meant to sit on the sidelines, to be overlooked, or to live a life that feels small. You were meant to take up space, to be bold, to go after what you want without hesitation. The world does not reward women who wait. It rewards those who are unapologetic about their worth, their dreams, and their potential. You have spent too much time worrying about whether people will judge you if you speak up, if you go after your goals, if you start setting boundaries and refusing to settle. You have held yourself back from opportunities because you were afraid of failure, afraid of rejection, afraid that if you tried and didn't succeed, people would laugh. But guess what? Playing it safe hasn't protected you from judgment. Staying quiet hasn't made life easier. It has only made you feel stuck, frustrated, and invisible. Confidence is not something you are given. It is something you build. It is something you decide to have. If you wait for the perfect moment to feel ready, you will wait forever. The women who succeed, the ones who create the life they want, are not the ones who are fearless. They are the ones who act despite their fears. They are the ones who understand that being bold is not about the absence of doubt. It is about refusing to let doubt control them. Being bold means speaking even when your voice shakes. It means putting yourself out there even when rejection is a possibility. It means knowing that let's get one thing straight. Detachment is not about playing games. It's not about pretending you don't care when you do, ignoring texts for hours to make someone sweat, or acting like love doesn't matter to you. Detachment is power. It's a shift in focus. It's the ability to hold your own no matter what's happening around you. Too many women fall into the trap of thinking that the more they give, the more they prove their worth. If I just love him harder, if I just show him how much I care, if I just make him see how good we are together, he won't pull away. But here's the hard truth. When you operate from that place, when you cling, when you overinvest, when you're attached to an outcome, they can sense it. They can sense when you're waiting on their text, when your mood depends on their attention, when your whole emotional world is wrapped up in them. And that energy, it doesn't inspire love, it suffocates it. But a woman who is detached, she's different. She's magnetic, not because she doesn't care, but because she isn't seeking external validation to feel whole. She moves through life with a quiet confidence, the kind that comes from knowing her worth no matter what. And that's irresistible. Detachment means you don't need constant reassurance to feel secure. You're not waiting by the phone, overanalyzing his words, or twisting yourself into knots trying to be enough. You already are enough, and you know it. If someone can't see that, it's their loss, not yours. Detachment means you don't chase, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you are hard to get. You're selective with your energy. You're not available for inconsistency, breadcrumbs, or half-hearted effort. If someone wants to be in your life, they need to earn that place. It also means you don't overgive. So many women pour themselves into people who haven't even shown up for them yet. They invest too much too soon, hoping to be chosen. But when you detach, you stop giving out love like it's a bribe. You let people prove they deserve your time and attention before you hand it over. Most importantly, detachment means you stop attaching your happiness to someone else's actions. A man not texting back does not define your worth. A man pulling away does not mean you did something wrong. A relationship ending does not mean you failed. When you're detached, you realize that your emotions are yours to control. You don't let someone else's behavior dictate how you feel about yourself. But let's be clear. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become cold or emotionally unavailable. It means you love with an open hand instead of a clenched fist. It means you allow things to flow rather than trying to force them. It means you understand that what's meant for you will stay, and what isn't, you're willing to let go. And here's the beautiful part. When you detach, you don't lose love. You invite better love. You attract people who respect your boundaries, value your presence, and rise to meet your energy instead of draining it. You create space for the kind of love that doesn't require you to chase, beg, or prove. The kind of love that feels like home instead of a battlefield. So the next time you feel yourself gripping too tightly, whether it's to a relationship, an outcome, or a person who isn't meeting you halfway, pause. Breathe. Remind yourself, you don't need to control this to be okay. You don't need to force anything that's truly meant for, because a woman who is detached, she is powerful, she is free, and that's something no one can resist. Let's talk about energy because it speaks before you do. It enters the room before you say a word. It's the thing people feel about you before they even know you. And when it comes to relationships, your energy is either pulling someone in or pushing them away. Whether you realize it or not, you've probably experienced this. You've met someone who didn't even have to say much, but there was something about them, something intriguing, something magnetic. And on the flip side, you've probably also met someone whose energy felt off. Maybe they were too eager, too anxious, or trying too hard. That energy, it's everything. You can say all the right words, wear all the right things, and play all the right games, but if your energy is screaming insecurity, desperation, or fear, that's what people will pick up on. When you're interacting with men, this matters even more. Attraction isn't just about what's being said, it's about what's felt. Think about when you're waiting for a text back. If your energy is calm, grounded, and detached, it's easy to wait. You send the message and go about your day because you're not basing your worth on the response. But if your energy is needy, anxious, or overinvested, the waiting becomes an emotional roller coaster. Why hasn't he replied yet? Did I say something wrong? Maybe if I double text, he'll answer. That energy doesn't just stay inside of you. It translates into your actions. It makes you react instead of receive. It makes you overcompensate, overexplain, or overgive. And that's when things start to fall apart. Here's what most women don't realize. The second your energy shifts into needing someone to validate you, the dynamic changes. You stop being the woman he was drawn to in the first place, the one who was effortlessly herself, the one who knew she was enough. Instead, you become someone who is seeking something from him. And men feel that shift. They may not be able to put it into words, but they sense it. They sense when you're looking to them for approval, when you're waiting on their next move to decide how you feel about yourself, when your happiness is tied to their responses. And that energy, it's heavy, it's pressure, and it's the opposite of attraction. On the flip side, when a woman is centered, when she knows her worth without needing someone else to confirm it, that energy is magnetic. She's not worried about whether he texts or not because she's busy. She's not analyzing every little detail because she's secure in herself. She's not waiting, she's living. And that energy, that's what men can't resist. Because here's something you need to know. People don't fall for words, they fall for how you make them feel. And when you're radiating confidence, self-respect, and ease, it changes the way you move, the way you communicate, the way you show up in every interaction. You don't rush, you don't force, you don't need anyone to make you feel chosen because you've already chosen yourself. That's why energy matters more than words. You can't convince someone to like you. You can't make someone value you. But when you shift your energy, when you start showing up as the woman who knows she's valuable rather than the one trying to prove it, you change everything. Men don't respond to pressure. They respond to presence. They respond to a woman who is already enough, who is full of life, connected to her own joy, her own purpose, her own self. That's the kind of energy they can't ignore. So the next time you feel yourself overthinking, waiting, or needing something outside of yourself to feel okay, pause, breathe, shift. Ask yourself, what's the energy I want to bring into this moment? Because trust me, your energy speaks louder than any words ever could. And when you learn to own it, you become unstoppable. Let's be real. Overanalyzing is exhausting. It drains your energy, steals your peace, and makes you question things that don't even need questioning. You get stuck in a loop, replaying conversations, dissecting text messages, trying to predict someone else's thoughts, like your happiness depends on it. But here's the truth. It doesn't. It never did. The more you analyze, the more you suffer. You start attaching meaning to things that don't actually mean anything. A delayed text turns into maybe he's losing interest. A short response becomes, did I say something wrong? A shift in his tone makes you spiral into, what did I do? Suddenly, you're stuck in your head, trying to solve a problem that doesn't even exist. And while you're doing that, while you're overthinking every little detail, you're not actually living. You're not present. You're not enjoying yourself. You're waiting for a sign, waiting for clarity, waiting for someone else's actions to give you permission to feel okay. But what if you didn't have to do that? What if instead of trying to figure everything out, you just let it be? Because here's the thing, the right things in life don't need to be dissected. They flow. They feel easy. They don't make you feel like you need to decode every interaction just to understand where you stand. When something is good for you, it doesn't create anxiety, it creates peace. So why waste your time obsessing over what someone else thinks when you could be out living your life? Why waste energy trying to control something that's not even in your control? The only thing you can control is you, your energy, your focus, your happiness. And when you shift your attention back to yourself, instead of analyzing someone else's behavior, everything changes. Imagine if you took all that energy you spend worrying about a text, a call, or a situation you can't control and put it into your passions, your goals, your joy. Imagine if instead of waiting for someone to validate your worth, you just decided you were already worthy. Because you are. When you stop overanalyzing, you start trusting. Trusting that if something is meant for you, it will be clear. Trusting that the people who truly care about you won't leave you confused. Trusting that no matter what happens, you will be fine. And that kind of trust, that's powerful. It makes you unshakable. It allows you to live in the moment instead of trying to control the future. It lets you enjoy people instead of trying to predict their next move. It makes you magnetic. Because nothing is more attractive than a woman who is fully present, fully herself, and fully alive. So the next time you catch yourself spiraling, pause, take a breath, remind yourself, I don't need to have all the answers right now, and then go do something that makes you feel good, something that brings you back to you. Because life isn't meant to be analyzed. It's meant to be lived. Silence is one of the most powerful things you can master. It speaks louder than words, carries more weight than explanations, and has the ability to shift an entire dynamic without you having to lift a finger. Yet most people don't know how to use it. Instead, they react. They argue, they over-explain to prove their worth, their feelings, their point. But here's the truth. Power isn't in the reaction. It's in the restraint. Think about the last time someone upset you. Maybe they ignored your message, said something disrespectful, or made you feel like an afterthought. What was your first instinct? If you're like most people, it was probably to react, to demand an answer, to express frustration, to say something that would make them see how they hurt you. But did it help? Or did it just make you feel like you were giving away your power? Because here's the thing, reacting emotionally doesn't make people listen. It doesn't make them respect you more. If anything, it gives them control. It shows them that they can affect you, that their actions dictate your emotions. And once they know that, they can push and pull you as they please. But when you don't react, when you choose silence over chasing, when you remove your energy instead of proving your point, that is when the dynamic silence forces people to sit with their own actions. It makes them wonder, why isn't she responding? Why isn't she fighting for my attention? It creates space for them to feel the absence of your energy. And that absence is often more powerful than anything you could ever say. When you react impulsively, you give people an easy way out. You give them a response they can dismiss, a fight they can blame on you, an emotional reaction they can use to justify their behavior. But when you're silent, they're left with only themselves, their actions, their choices, and that is what makes them reflect. This doesn't mean you suppress your emotions or ignore things that genuinely need to be addressed. It means you choose when and if something is worth your energy. It means you recognize that not everything deserves a response, that sometimes the best way to communicate your value is to say nothing at all, because silence isn't weakness, it's not avoidance, it's control. It's the ability to sit in your power without the need to beg, convince, or prove. And the moment you master that, you become untouchable. If you want to keep a man interested, you have to understand one fundamental truth. People value what they have to earn. When something is too easy, too available, or too predictable, it loses its excitement. It becomes routine. And in relationships, routine often kills attraction faster than anything else. Now, let's be clear. This isn't about playing games or manipulating someone by deliberately ignoring them. It's about creating natural space. It's about having a life so full, so rich, and so engaging that you aren't sitting around waiting for him to call, text, or plan the next date. It's about being a woman who isn't available all the time, not because she's trying to make him chase her, but because she has things going on that don't revolve around him. Men are wired to crave a little challenge. Not in the sense that they want drama, but in the sense that they want to feel like they're earning your time and attention. When a woman is always available, always waiting, always accommodating, she unintentionally removes that challenge. And once a man feels like he doesn't have to put in effort, he stops putting in effort. Think about it. How do you feel when something is just handed to you without any effort? When there's no anticipation, no sense of excitement, no need to work for it? It's human nature to take for granted the things that require no effort to keep. And this applies to relationships too. Being unavailable sometimes means you don't drop everything just because he texts. It means you don't rearrange your entire schedule to fit his. It means that when he reaches out, you don't always jump to respond immediately, not because you're trying to be distant, but because you have a life that doesn't revolve around him, and that life, that's what makes you attractive. That's what makes him want to be around you. When a woman is too available, she unknowingly sends a message. You are the most important thing in my life, and I will always prioritize you over myself. And while that might sound romantic, it actually does the opposite of what you want. It makes a man feel like he doesn't have to do anything to keep your attention. There's no excitement, no mystery, no pull that makes him want to chase. But when you are sometimes unavailable, when you are busy, engaged, and living your life on your own terms, he starts to notice. He starts to wonder what you're up to. He starts to miss you, and that is what keeps the spark alive. Now, this isn't about making a man insecure or playing hard to get to the point where he feels unwanted. It's about balance. It's about showing up when you genuinely want to, while also making sure you don't lose yourself in the process. It's about making sure that you remain the priority in your own life rather than making him your priority. Because here's the truth. Men fall in love with women who make them feel something. And when you are always there, always available, always predictable, you remove that sense of excitement. You become comfortable. And while comfort is great for long-term connection, attraction thrives on anticipation, on missing someone, on wanting to be around them. The irony is, when you stop making yourself so available, you don't lose him. You make him want you more. You create a space where he has to step up, put in effort, and choose to be around you, instead of just expecting you to always be there. So instead of constantly being the one to reach out, let him wonder about you sometimes. Instead of being free every time he asks to hang out, let him see that you have other things going on. Instead of always responding instantly, take your time, not as a strategy, but because you're genuinely busy building a life you love. When you do this, something shifts. He starts appreciating your time more. He starts valuing your presence because he sees that it's not something he can take for granted. He starts choosing you rather than just expecting you to be there. And that's what keeps him interested. Not games, not manipulation, just a woman who knows her worth, lives her life, and lets him earn his place in it. Negative feelings have a way of consuming you if you let them. They creep in quietly at first. Doubt, anxiety, frustration, until suddenly they're running the show. You replay conversations in your head, analyze situations that didn't go the way you wanted, and get caught in an emotional storm that feels impossible to escape. But what if the way out isn't through more thinking, more analyzing, or more effort? What if the real cure to overcoming negative feelings is detachment? Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you suppress your emotions or pretend nothing affects you. True detachment means stepping back and refusing to let emotions control you. It's about creating enough space between you and your feelings so that you can observe them instead of being consumed by them. Think about how much energy you waste holding on to things that don't serve you, obsessing over what someone else thinks, reliving past mistakes, fearing outcomes that haven't even happened. All of this drains you. It keeps you stuck, and it gives power to things that shouldn't have control over your life. But when you detach, everything shifts. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause. Instead of drowning in your emotions, you allow them to pass through you. Instead of attaching your happiness to external things, how someone treats you, whether things go your way, you find peace within yourself. The truth is, most of our suffering comes from attachment. Attachment to people behaving a certain way. Attachment to outcomes turning out exactly as we imagine. Attachment to the idea that things need to happen on our timeline. And when reality doesn't match those expectations, we feel pain. But pain isn't caused by the situation itself, it's caused by resistance to what is. And detachment is the antidote to that resistance. It allows you to accept life as it comes without letting it define your emotional state. It gives you freedom. Detachment doesn't mean disengagement. It means you show up fully, love deeply, and give your best. But you don't cling. You don't need things to go a certain way to feel okay. You don't tie your happiness to whether someone stays or leaves, whether an opportunity works out or falls through. You trust that no matter what happens, you'll be fine. And when you trust that, everything changes. You stop overreacting. You stop begging for answers. You stop gripping so tightly onto things that aren't meant for you. You move with ease because you know that what's meant for you will always find you. Detachment gives you clarity. It removes the fog of overthinking and allows you to respond instead of react. It keeps you from making decisions based on fear or desperation. It helps you recognize when something isn't aligned with you so you can let go instead of forcing it. When you practice detachment, you regain your power. You take control of your emotions instead of letting them control you. You stop chasing things that drain you and start attracting things that are meant for you. And most importantly, you realize that peace was never in the outcome. It was always within you. At the end of the day, detachment isn't about being cold or indifferent. It's about being free. Free from the need to control. Free from the weight of overanalyzing, free from the emotional roller coaster that comes with attachment to things outside of your control. It's about reclaiming your energy, your peace, and your power. When you learn to detach, you stop letting external circumstances dictate your emotional state. You stop giving people, situations, or outcomes the ability to define your happiness. Instead, you move through life with confidence, knowing that whatever happens, you will be okay. And that kind of energy, that's unstoppable. That's what makes you magnetic. That's what allows you to truly live instead of just reacting to life. So take a deep breath. Release the need to grip so tightly and remind yourself you are whole on your own. You don't need validation, approval, or certainty to be at peace. Everything that's meant for you will come with ease, and everything that leaves was never truly aligned. The moment you let go of attachment is the moment you step into your true power. And from that place, you can create a life that feels light, effortless, and free. Let's get something straight. Being a chosen woman means you're different. You don't fit in. You don't blend into the background. You don't follow the crowd. And guess what? That's exactly why you walk alone. A chosen woman doesn't walk alone because she wants to. She walks alone because she has to. She is different, and that difference is what sets her apart from the rest. It's not that she doesn't want companionship, support, or understanding. It's that the world around her often fails to provide it. A chosen woman sees life through a different lens. She has a vision that others don't understand, a drive that others find intimidating, and a presence that makes people uncomfortable. This is the reality of being chosen. It isolates you, but only because you are meant for something greater. From a young age, a chosen woman realizes that she doesn't fit in the way others do. Maybe she's always had bigger dreams than the people around her. Maybe she's asked deeper questions, refused to accept things at face value, or pursued growth when others were content with mediocrity. While other people are comfortable in their routines, she is constantly searching for more. She feels the weight of her purpose even when she doesn't fully understand it. And that weight makes her walk a different path, one that others may never dare to take. The truth is, most people settle. They settle for jobs they don't love, relationships that drain them, and a life that feels safe but uninspiring. They choose comfort over challenge, acceptance over authenticity, and familiarity over growth. But a chosen woman? She can't settle. Not because she doesn't want security, but because something deep inside her refuses to let her shrink. Even when she tries to be like everyone else, something feels off. It's like wearing a mask that doesn't fit. She knows deep down that she is meant for more. This realization comes with a cost. She may lose friendships because she no longer relates to small talk and gossip. She may feel disconnected from family members who don't understand her ambition or who think she is too much for wanting more out of life. She may struggle with relationships because the average person doesn't know how to handle a woman with such strength and independence. People misinterpret her confidence as arrogance, her focus as selfishness, and her unwillingness to settle as being picky or difficult. But here's what most people don't see: the loneliness that comes with being different. A chosen woman often stands at a crossroads. Should she conform to fit in, or should she embrace the solitude that comes with her path? It's not an easy choice. There are nights when she questions everything, when she wonders if something is wrong with her, when she feels the ache of walking alone. But despite the doubts, she knows that betraying herself to gain acceptance would be far worse than facing loneliness. And this is what truly sets her apart. A chosen woman doesn't just walk alone. She chooses to walk alone rather than compromise who she is. She refuses to shrink to make others comfortable. She refuses to stay silent when her voice matters. She refuses to live a life dictated by fear, judgment, or societal expectations. She knows that walking alone is not a curse. It is the price of greatness. Her path is not easy, but it is necessary, because she is not here to blend in. She is here to break barriers, to inspire, to lead, and to show others what is possible when you refuse to settle. The world needs chosen women, women who are bold enough to walk their own path, even when it means walking alone. Loneliness can feel like a heavy burden, but for a chosen woman, it is something entirely different. It is preparation. When a woman is destined for greatness, she is often set apart from the rest, not because she is being prepared for something bigger than she can currently see. It is easy to mistake this isolation for rejection or punishment. But in reality, it is a refining process. When a woman is chosen, she is removed from the distractions, the noise, and the influences that could weaken her spirit or pull her away from her purpose. She is placed in a season of solitude so she can develop the strength, wisdom, and resilience needed to carry the weight of her calling. Most people fear loneliness because they associate it with emptiness. They believe that being alone means they are forgotten or unimportant. But a chosen woman must understand that her solitude is not a sign of lack, it is a season of growth. The people who once surrounded her may have walked away, not because she did something wrong, but because they were never meant to walk her entire journey with her. The friendships that faded, the relationships that ended, the doors that closed, none of it was a mistake. It was all part of the process, a necessary separation so she could step into the next version of herself. Growth is never easy, and transformation requires space. A caterpillar does not become a butterfly while remaining out in the open, surrounded by distraction. It goes into isolation, into the cocoon, where it undergoes a process that is painful, lonely, and completely unseen. And yet, without that period of solitude, it would never develop the strength to fly. The same principle applies to a chosen woman. She is not alone because she is abandoned. She is alone because she is in a season of deep internal transformation. She is becoming stronger, wiser, and more aligned with her true purpose. During this time, she may feel misunderstood. She may look around and see others easily forming connections, easily finding their place in the world, while she struggles to find where she belongs. She may feel frustrated, wondering why she seems to be on a different timeline than everyone else. But what she must realize is that chosen women do not follow the same path as the majority. Their journey is different, their lessons are different, and their growth requires a level of solitude that most people will never experience. It is in this solitude that she will discover her true strength. Without the constant noise of the world, she will finally hear her own voice. Without the need for external validation, she will learn to trust herself. Without the pressure to conform, she will embrace her uniqueness. And most importantly, without the distractions of unnecessary relationships, she will have the space to focus on her goals, her dreams, and the impact she is meant to make. This season of loneliness is not meant to break her, it is meant to build her. It is shaping her into the kind of woman who does not rely on the approval of others to feel worthy. It is teaching her that she is enough just as she is. It is strengthening her resolve so that when she steps into her purpose, she will be unshakable. She will no longer seek validation from people who do not understand her. She will no longer waste her time trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. She will walk with confidence, knowing that every moment of isolation was necessary to prepare her for the life she is meant to live. At some point, she will look back on this season and realize that it was never punishment, it was protection. She was being shielded from distractions, from relationships that would have held her back, from environments that would have drained her energy. She was being given the opportunity to grow into the woman she was always meant to be. What once felt like loneliness will be seen as one of the greatest gifts she ever received. And when she emerges from this season, she will not just be strong, she will be unstoppable. Silence is often misunderstood. Most people fear it, avoid it, and try to fill it with distractions. But for a chosen woman, silence is not something to escape. It is something to embrace. It is in silence that she finds clarity, strength, and an unshakable understanding of who she truly is. The world is constantly demanding attention, pulling people in different directions, and drowning out their inner voice. But when a woman is chosen, she is called to something higher. She cannot afford to be consumed by the noise. She must step back, embrace the silence, and allow it to shape her. In a world that thrives on constant connection, being alone with one's thoughts can feel uncomfortable. Most people surround themselves with endless distractions, social media, television, unnecessary conversations, because they don't want to face themselves. They don't want to confront their own doubts, fears, or deep desires. But a chosen woman is different. She does not run from herself. She does not fear the quiet. Instead, she uses it as a tool to understand herself on a deeper level. Silence strips away the external influences that try to shape who she should be. It removes the expectations of others, the pressure to conform, and the endless opinions that cloud her judgment. When the noise disappears, she is left with one thing, her own voice. And that voice is powerful. It tells her what she truly wants, what she needs to let go of, and what she is meant to do. But she can only hear it if she is willing to sit in the silence long enough to listen. Many people never discover their true purpose because they never take the time to be alone. They rely on others to tell them who they are. They follow trends, chase external validation, and lose themselves in the process. A chosen woman cannot afford to make that mistake. Her path requires her to know herself better than anyone else does. She must be clear on what she stands for, what she believes in, and where she is going, and that clarity only comes in the moments of stillness. Silence also reveals strength. When a woman can sit with herself without distraction and not feel the need to seek approval or validation, she becomes unbreakable. She learns to trust herself in ways that others never do. She stops looking to the world for answers and starts relying on her own intuition. She realizes that everything she needs, wisdom, confidence, direction, is already within her. It has always been there. The problem was never that she lacked these things. It was that the noise around her drowned them out. There is power in stepping back and creating space in a world that constantly pushes people to stay busy. A chosen woman understands the value of stillness. She knows that her best ideas, her biggest breakthroughs, and her greatest moments of growth come when she allows herself to pause. She does not rush her process. She does not force things to happen before their time. Instead, she listens, reflects, and moves forward with intention. This does not mean silence is always easy. There will be moments when it feels isolating, when it brings up emotions she would rather avoid, when it forces her to face parts of herself that need healing. But this is where real transformation happens. A chosen woman does not shy away from the hard work of self-discovery. She understands that before she can lead, she must first know herself. Before she can impact others, she must first be deeply connected to her own truth. And before she can fully step into her purpose, she must first learn to trust the guidance that comes from within. The world may not understand her need for silence. It may try to pull her back into the noise, convince her that she is missing out, or make her feel as though she is falling behind. But a chosen woman knows better. She understands that her journey is not about keeping up with the world. It is about aligning with her purpose. And that alignment requires moments of quiet, moments of reflection, and moments where she steps away from the distractions to reconnect with who she truly is. When she embraces the silence, she gains something most people never do: an unshakable sense of self, a clear direction, and the confidence to walk her path with certainty. A chosen woman does not owe anyone an explanation for who she is, what she believes, or where she is headed. She does not need to justify her dreams, her standards, or her decisions to people who were never meant to understand them in the first place. The moment she realizes this is the moment she reclaims her power. Too many people waste their energy trying to explain themselves to those who are committed to misunderstanding them. They believe that if they can just say the right thing, present the right argument, or prove their worth, then the world will finally accept them. But a chosen woman knows better. She understands that no amount of explaining will make someone see what they refuse to see. Not everyone is meant to understand her journey. Some people are only capable of seeing the world through the limits of their own experiences. If they have never dreamed big, they will never understand her ambition. If they have never challenged the status quo, they will never understand her courage. If they have never stepped outside of their comfort zone, they will never understand why she refuses to settle. Their inability to understand is not a reflection of her, it is a reflection of them. She does not need to carry the weight of their limited perspective. People will question her. They will ask why she is still single when others have settled into relationships. They will ask why she left a secure job to pursue a vision that only she can see. They will tell her she is too much, too ambitious, too independent, too different. And for a moment, she may feel the urge to explain herself, to defend her choices, to seek validation. But then she will remember that she does not need permission to be who she is. She does not need to convince anyone of her worth. She does not need to make sense to people who are not meant to walk her path. There is freedom in letting go of the need to explain. When a chosen woman stops explaining herself, she takes back the energy that was being wasted on people who will never understand her. She stops waiting for approval and starts moving with confidence. She stops second-guessing herself and starts trusting her own intuition. She stops looking for outside validation and realizes that she is enough exactly as she is. This is not arrogance. It is self-respect. It is recognizing that she was not created to live according to other people's expectations. It is understanding that her time, her dreams, and her energy are too valuable to waste on convincing people who are not meant to be part of her journey. The right people, the ones who truly support her, believe in her, and uplift her, will never require an explanation. They will see her for who she is without her having to prove anything. They will respect her decisions, even if they do not fully understand them. And they will stand beside her not because she convinced them to, but because they recognize her strength and her vision. A chosen woman walks with certainty, knowing that she does not need to be understood to be worthy. She does not need to fit into society's mold to be valuable. She does not need to explain why she chooses growth over comfort, purpose over approval, or authenticity over acceptance. She simply lives her truth unapologetically and allows the right people to find her. The more she stands firm in who she is, the more she attracts those who align with her journey and repels those who were never meant to be part of it. She does not waste her time trying to prove herself. She does not shrink to make others comfortable. She does not pause her journey to wait for people to catch up. She keeps moving, knowing that those who are meant to walk with her will find their way, and those who don't, they were never meant to be part of the story she is writing. A chosen woman understands that focus is her greatest weapon. In a world full of distractions, she refuses to let anything pull her away from her purpose. She knows that every great achievement requires discipline, commitment, and an unshakable belief in what she is doing. She does not entertain negativity, drama, or self-doubt because she knows that her energy is too valuable to be wasted on anything that does not serve her growth. She moves with intention, making decisions that align with her goals rather than following the crowd or seeking approval. There will always be moments when loneliness creeps in, when she questions whether the path she has chosen is worth it. The weight of walking alone can sometimes feel unbearable, and she may wonder if she is missing out by not following the path that others take. But deep down, she knows that she was never meant for an average life. She was meant for something greater. And that kind of purpose requires sacrifice. It requires saying no to temporary pleasures in order to build something lasting. It requires choosing solitude over meaningless connections. It requires trusting that even though the journey is difficult, it will be worth it in the end. A chosen woman does not allow fear to dictate her choices. She does not let the fear of failure stop her from trying, and she does not let the fear of judgment keep her from pursuing what she knows is right. She understands that fear is just an illusion, a test to see if she is truly committed to her path. Instead of running from it, she faces it head on. She pushes past self-doubt, past uncertainty, past the voices that tell her she is not enough. She refuses to be controlled by anything that would keep her from becoming the person she is meant to be. She also understands the power of consistency. She does not just work toward her goals when she feels motivated. She does it every single day, whether she feels like it or not. She knows that motivation fades, but discipline is what keeps her moving forward. She builds habits that support her success, and she sticks to them even when no one is watching. She does not wait for the perfect moment to start. She creates momentum by taking action, no matter how small. People around her may not always understand her dedication. They may call her obsessed, too serious, or too focused on her work. But she does not let their opinions distract her. She knows that most people settle for a life of comfort, never pushing themselves beyond what is easy or familiar. She refuses to be one of them. She refuses to let the fear of being different keep her from pursuing her dreams. Her focus is what separates her from the rest. While others get caught up in distractions, she keeps her eyes on the prize. While others waste time seeking validation, she builds something meaningful. While others complain about their circumstances, she takes action to change them. She understands that success is not about luck. It is about relentless dedication to a vision that only she can see. She does not let setbacks define her. When things do not go as planned, she does not quit. She adapts, learns, and keeps moving forward. She knows that every failure is just a lesson in disguise, a stepping stone on the path to something greater. She does not dwell on the past or worry about the future. She focuses on what she can do right now to get closer to her goals. Every day, she reminds herself why she started. She stays connected to her purpose, refusing to let temporary discomfort pull her away from what truly matters. She does not let loneliness, fear, or doubt distract her. She keeps showing up, keeps pushing forward, and keeps believing in herself, knowing that her focus will take her exactly where she is meant to go. A chosen woman does not seek validation from the world because she understands that true confidence comes from within. She does not need others to approve of her choices, her dreams, or her way of living, because she knows that the only person who truly needs to believe in her is herself. She has spent too much time questioning whether she is enough, whether she is on the right path, and whether she is worthy of success. But at some point, she realizes that the search for external validation is a never-ending.
Let me tell you something nobody talks about. When you stop texting, calling, or chasing after a man, it shakes him. Not always because he misses you, but because you changed the game. Your silence says more than 1,000 messages ever could. And today, we're breaking down exactly why he reacts so strongly when you finally stop reaching out. When you stop contacting a man, something unexpected happens. Something deeper than just missing a few text messages. It disrupts the rhythm, that constant back and forth, the little pings of validation, attention, and connection he had grown used to. It's suddenly gone. And let me be very clear, silence isn't passive. Silence is powerful. It's disruptive. When a person is used to being at the center of your attention, when they're used to you always reaching out, always showing up, always initiating the conversation or checking in, they start taking that for granted. They stop feeling the weight of your presence because it's just always there. That's human nature. So the moment you pull back, really pull back without the intention of manipulating or testing, it shifts the entire dynamic. Suddenly, there's a gap where your energy used to be, and people notice that. Even if they don't say it out loud, even if they pretend they don't care, they feel it. That absence echoes louder than any word you could have said. Why? Because we don't notice consistency until it's no longer consistent. You were part of his routine, whether he admitted it or not. Even if he never labeled you, even if he never gave you the commitment you deserved, your presence had weight. And when you stop contacting him, you take that weight away. That absence becomes the loudest sound in the room. The truth is, a lot of men don't realize how much space you're holding for them, emotionally, mentally, and energetically, until you stop, until you go silent. That's when they feel the gap. That's when the thoughts start creeping in. Why hasn't she texted? Did she move on? Did I mess this up? And here's the key. They don't feel this way because of one missed call. They feel it because the pattern they were comfortable with is now broken. It forces a reaction. Sometimes it's panic. Sometimes it's ego. Sometimes it's a genuine realization of your value. But whatever it is, it's a reaction. And that's the point. Your silence disrupts more than his routine. It confronts him with the reality that maybe you're no longer available to be treated as an option. Maybe you're done being the one who always initiates, always forgives, always waits around. That space you created, it forces him to sit with himself. And most people, especially those who never fully appreciated you, don't know what to do with that kind of quiet. Because the noise you used to make, that love, that effort, that connection, that was filling something in them. And now they have to feel the emptiness without it. And here's what's wild. Some men don't even fully understand what they're reacting to. They just know something feels off. They feel a shift. And because you've always been so accessible, that shift is unsettling. It's not about drama. It's not about revenge. It's about self-respect. When you stop reaching out, it's not just about what he thinks or feels. It's about what you decided. You decided you deserve reciprocity. You deserve peace. You deserve to no longer carry the emotional burden of keeping something alive by yourself. And he reacts not just because he misses you, but because your silence speaks a truth louder than any words ever could. You're no longer waiting. You've moved. You've chosen you. When you stop reaching out to a man, you're not just creating space, you're taking back control. And that changes everything. For so long, maybe you were the one initiating, the one checking in, the one overthinking every message and wondering if your silence would be misunderstood. You were carrying the weight of the connection on your back, trying to keep something alive that felt one-sided. And in the process, even without realizing it, you gave away your power. Every time you reached out when he didn't, every time you ignored your gut just to keep peace, every time you prioritized how he felt over how you felt, you were slowly handing him more and more control over the dynamic. But the moment you stopped, the moment you put the phone down and said, no more chasing, you didn't just go quiet. You shifted the balance. You recentered the energy. You stopped operating from a place of fear of losing him, fear of being misunderstood, fear of seeming distant, and you started acting from a place of strength. That kind of shift doesn't go unnoticed. He may not say it, he may not even fully understand it himself, but he feels it. That subtle difference in your energy, it lands. And it challenges him because what he was used to, your consistency, your emotional labor, your effort is no longer there to cushion his indifference. Taking back control doesn't mean playing games. It means choosing yourself. It means no longer begging for breadcrumbs or waiting around for someone to meet you halfway. When you stop contacting him, you're not punishing him. You're prioritizing your peace. You're finally saying, if I have to force this, it's not for me. And that is power. Real, grounded, unapologetic power. It's not loud, but it's firm. It doesn't demand attention, but it commands respect. You don't need to scream. You don't need to argue. You just remove yourself from the cycle. And the moment you do, he starts to feel the absence of your effort. The space you gave so freely is no longer accessible. And for the first time, he's left to consider what you really brought to the table. Sometimes he reacts with confusion, sometimes with anger, sometimes he doubles down and pretends like he doesn't care. But underneath it all, there's a shift happening. Because whether he liked to admit it or not, he got used to the dynamic where you led the connection. He got used to you overcompensating for his lack of consistency. And now, without you there to keep things moving, he's left to deal with the void. That's when the panic can kick in. That's when the regrets surface, because the control he had, the ability to engage with you on his terms, is gone. And that forces him to face the truth. Maybe he was never in control at all. Maybe you were just giving him space you could have given yourself. It's not about being cold. It's not about shutting down. It's about aligning your energy with your value. You stopped contacting him not because you're trying to get a reaction, but because you finally realized you don't need to beg for someone to see your worth. You're not trying to make a point. You are the point. And once you remember that, you stop chasing clarity from people who were always confusing. You stop craving validation from people who never offered stability. And that's when the power shifts. That's when everything changes, not because you played it smart, but because you finally started choosing yourself. And that energy, that's the energy he feels. That's what makes him react. He was comfortable, not committed. That's the hard truth most people don't want to say out loud. A lot of the time, when a man reacts strongly to your silence, it's not because he was all in. It's because you disrupted a comfort zone that worked perfectly for him. You were showing up, being consistent, putting in effort, keeping the connection going. And maybe he liked having you there, like knowing you'd always text back, always check in, always be available. But none of that required him to step up. He didn't have to invest the same way. He didn't have to match your energy. He didn't have to commit. He just had to receive. When you suddenly stop, when you stop reaching out, stop checking in, stop showing up with that same emotional energy, it hits him not necessarily because he misses you the way you deserve to be missed, but because the comfort of the dynamic is gone. The pattern he benefited from is now broken. You were making it easy for him to stay emotionally passive. You gave him access to a relationship rhythm that didn't cost him effort, it cost you. And now that you're done carrying it, he's uncomfortable. And here's the important distinction. Just because someone's uncomfortable doesn't mean they're ready to change. His reaction might look like anger. It might look like confusion. It might look like him reaching out and asking why you've gone cold, even though you were the only one keeping things warm to begin with. But his reaction is rarely about commitment. It's about disruption. You've disrupted the emotional supply chain. He no longer has a steady stream of your attention, your affection, your time. And that lack of access creates anxiety, not because he's invested in building something real with you, but because he was invested in what your presence gave him, comfort. It's easy to confuse comfort for love, especially when someone seems to enjoy being around you or talking to you. But people can enjoy your energy without valuing your presence. They can benefit from your love without being committed to protecting it. That's why you have to pay attention to what happens when you stop giving, when you stop feeding the connection. Does it fall apart? Does he show up differently? Or does he just react because his convenience was interrupted? That's what we're talking about when we say he was comfortable, not committed. He was comfortable having you around without having to be emotionally available. Comfortable knowing you'd always be the first to reach out. Comfortable never having to define things because you accepted the undefined. But when that comfort gets taken away, it forces him to feel the weight of your absence. And here's where things get real. Some men will react by trying to pull you back just enough to restore their comfort, but not enough to actually commit. They'll breadcrumb you, offer attention in small doses just to reset the dynamic they liked best. You doing the most, This is why your silence is so powerful, because it doesn't just disrupt his routine, it exposes it. It forces him to confront what this connection really was and what he was actually contributing. And more often than not, what he realizes is that he didn't invest, he just got comfortable. And now he's reacting not to the loss of a meaningful relationship, but to the loss of something convenient. That's the truth. That's why you have to trust yourself when you go silent, not to get a reaction, but to find your clarity. His reaction will tell you everything you need to know about whether he was there for real or just because it was easy. When you stop contacting a man, the reaction you often get isn't rooted in love, it's rooted in ego. And that's the part most people overlook. You think he's upset because he misses you, because he realizes he lost something special, because he suddenly understands your value. But in a lot of cases, his reaction has nothing to do with any of that. It's his ego that's bruised. It's his pride that's rattled. You took away something he thought he could always count on: your attention, your availability, your emotional investment. And for someone who is used to that kind of access, losing it feels like a hit to their identity. Ego wants to be in control. Ego thrives on attention. Ego needs reassurance that you're still there, still waiting, still emotionally attached, even if he's not offering you the same. So when you break that pattern, when you stop reaching out and start prioritizing your peace, it shakes his ego more than anything else, not because you were his person, but because you were a reflection of how desirable and in control he felt. You boosted his confidence just by being there. You validated his position in your life. And when you go silent, that mirror disappears and he's left staring at himself without the benefit of your energy propping him up. That's why his reaction can be so intense. It's not necessarily about wanting to build something real with you. It's about regaining control. He wants to feel like he still matters, that he still has access to you, that he can still draw you back in when he chooses. It becomes a power struggle, not a love story. And if you're not aware of that dynamic, you can get pulled back into it, thinking his reaction means something deeper than it actually does. But attention doesn't equal intention. And a bruised ego will chase you harder than a loving heart ever will, because ego doesn't like to lose. He might message you out of nowhere. He might try to guilt trip you or confuse you, ask why you've changed, accuse you of playing games. But what he's really saying is, I'm not used to being on the outside. He wants to know that he still has pull, that you're still emotionally accessible. And the moment he gets that reassurance, the chase ends. Because it was never about love. It was about ego recovery. It was about proving to himself that he could still get your attention, still affect you, still hold a place in your heart, even if he never planned to give you the same in return. This is where you have to be brutally honest with yourself. Does his reaction actually show emotional growth, or is it just a performance? Is he stepping up or just stepping in for a moment to reset the power dynamic? Because if it's ego-driven, it won't last. Once he feels like he won your attention back, the effort fades. The silence you broke gets filled with the same inconsistency that made you go quiet in the first place. That's the cycle. That's why understanding the difference between ego and heart is so important. When you go silent and he reacts, observe, not emotionally, but logically. Ask yourself, is this reaction about reconnecting or just reasserting control? Because when someone truly values you, they don't just react to your absence. They respond with presence. They don't just panic when you go quiet. They reflect, take accountability, and show up in a real way. Ego doesn't do that. Ego just wants to win. And if you're not careful, it'll keep pulling you into relationships where you're not loved. You're just used to make someone feel better about themselves. Men process loss through absence. It's one of those truths that reveals itself over time, not through words, but through behavior. When you're consistently present, texting, calling, checking in, showing love, most of the time, they don't really feel the full weight of what you bring to the table. They might appreciate it on some level, but they don't feel it because they're not forced to confront life without it. Your energy is just there. It's comforting, predictable, accessible. And as long as you're always reaching out, always showing up, always available, they don't really have to think about what life would feel like without you. But the moment you stop, that's when something shifts. The moment the calls stop coming, the messages go unread, the little updates and emotional check-ins go quiet, that's when the processing begins, because absence forces awareness. It's in the silence that they realize just how much noise you filled in their life, how much consistency you provided, how much love you offered, even if they never reciprocated it properly. When you're gone, they're left with the emotional echo of everything they took for granted. And here's where it gets real. Men often need distance to connect the dots. They need space to process what was actually happening while you were close, when you were in it, actively loving them, showing up, forgiving, overlooking things. They weren't thinking deeply. They were just receiving. And people who are constantly receiving don't stop to reflect on the value of what they're receiving until it's no longer there. You become part of their environment, like air, vital but unnoticed. It's only when that air is gone that the panic starts. That's when the realization hits. You were giving so much without asking for much in return. The absence reveals everything. It reveals how much they relied on your effort. It reveals how emotionally passive they may have been. It reveals how little they actually considered what you needed because you were too busy giving them what they wanted. In that space, in that silence, they finally start to feel. And sometimes it's regret. Sometimes it's guilt. Sometimes it's a deep awareness that they let something valuable slip away without doing the work to keep it. But that process doesn't start until you stop. That's why your silence is so powerful, not because it's manipulative, but because it forces the reflection they avoided when you were still present. Some men don't realize what they've lost until they're faced with the cold truth that they no longer have access to it. And it's not because you played a game or pulled back to get a reaction. It's because you reached your limit. You chose peace over chaos. You chose to stop pouring from an empty cup. And in doing that, you unknowingly triggered a process in him he didn't even know he needed. Because absence doesn't just create space. It creates clarity. It forces him to evaluate the connection, the effort, the way he showed up or didn't. And depending on who he is and where he's at emotionally, that realization can lead to two very different outcomes. He may grow from it, he may reach out and actually show up differently, or he may just spiral, lash out, or try to pull you back into a dynamic that still doesn't serve you. But either way, the processing begins when your presence ends. That's how it works. That's why silence is so loud, because it doesn't just communicate distance, it communicates boundaries. It tells him that the version of you who tolerated less than she deserved no longer exists. And that's a loss he can only understand through the weight of your absence. When you walk away, you teach him something he may never have fully understood before, what it feels like to lose you. And let me tell you, this is a powerful lesson for both of you. So often people get caught up in the emotional labor of a relationship, trying to keep it alive, trying to make sure that their partner feels valued, seen, and loved. But in that process, you end up losing yourself. You end up losing sight of what you need, what you deserve, and what boundaries you should have set. You get so focused on keeping the connection strong that you forget that relationships, real ones, require balance and mutual effort. When you finally stop, when you finally choose yourself, you're not just ending the connection, you're showing him what it looks like when someone decides they can't settle for less anymore. You're teaching him the true value of your time, your energy, and your heart. And in many cases, he may not have fully grasped how much you brought to the table until you walked away. While you were still giving, while you were still fighting for it, he might have taken it for granted. He might have thought that you would always be there, always be ready to forgive, always be willing to come back, to try harder. But by choosing to step back, by choosing to stop reaching out, you teach him what it feels like to lose someone who was willing to give everything. This isn't about trying to get revenge or make him feel guilty. It's about taking a stand for yourself. It's about saying that you deserve more than just the scraps of attention, love, or care. It's about showing him that your presence is a gift, not a given. Your silence isn't a punishment, it's a realization. And what it does is force him to confront the reality of what he could have had and let slip through his fingers. When you stop contacting him, the absence forces him to reflect. He can't ignore it anymore. He can't fill that space with distractions, excuses, or avoidance. He has to sit with the fact that you're no longer there, no longer the one who was always trying to make things work. And in that space, he's forced to understand the depth of what you contributed to his life, whether he ever acknowledged it before or not. It's a wake-up call. And sometimes it's the only way for someone to really get it. By walking away, you also show him that you won't tolerate being an option. You won't tolerate being treated like a convenience. You won't be the one who has to make all the effort while he stays comfortably distant, giving just enough to keep you hanging on. You're teaching him that he had something rare, something valuable, and now he's left to understand what it's like to be without it. And that is a powerful lesson, the kind of lesson that forces growth, or at least a moment of reflection. And while he's processing that, while he's trying to figure out why you're not there anymore, you're teaching yourself too. You're learning to stop waiting for someone else to define your worth. You're learning that your value isn't dependent on anyone else's actions, and that your peace, your happiness, and your emotional energy are all yours to protect. You're showing yourself that you are enough, just as you are, without needing to chase anyone's approval, love, or validation. When you walk away, you're not just teaching him about loss, you're also teaching yourself the most important lesson, that you are worthy of being treated with respect, care, and genuine love. And that when someone can't offer that in return, it's okay to let them go. You're teaching both of you what it looks like when someone values themselves enough to walk away from something that no longer serves them. And that's a lesson that stays with both of you long after the silence takes over. When you stop contacting a man, it's not just about pulling away. It's about reclaiming your power and teaching both yourself and him valuable lessons. It's about prioritizing your own worth, understanding the power of your presence, and recognizing that silence can be more transformative than any words you could say. His reactions, whether confusion, frustration, or even an attempt to pull you back, are merely reflections of how he has relied on your effort and energy without fully reciprocating it. In that silence, he is forced to evaluate what he truly lost. And in that process, you find your own clarity, your own strength, and the ability to choose what truly aligns with your value. Your decision to stop contacting him isn't about manipulation or getting even. It's about showing up for yourself. It's about realizing that you deserve to be in relationships where effort is mutual, where love is not just taken, but also given. It's about acknowledging that you are worthy of respect, love, and emotional investment. And when you stop giving, you are not only teaching him a lesson in the value of what you brought to the table, but also reminding yourself of your own power to create the life you desire. So as you move forward, remember that your peace is paramount and your worth is not up for negotiation. Don't be afraid to walk away from something that isn't serving you, for in doing so, you create the space for something much greater to come into your life. Keep choosing yourself, keep knowing your worth, and watch how everything around you begins to shift when you stop settling for anything less than what you truly deserve.
Have you ever asked yourself why a man seems wildly obsessed with you right up until the moment you start loving him back? Why he chases with passion, urgency, and fire when you're unavailable, only to turn cold, distant, or disinterested once you're emotionally open? Is it just bad timing, poor communication, or is there something far more hidden, far more psychological, perhaps even ancient at work here? Let me challenge what you might think you know about male attraction. Most women are taught that being loving, nurturing, and emotionally available is the chef's path to being loved in return. But what if I told you that for many men, especially those still operating from unconscious patterns, that exact availability often triggers disinterest instead of intimacy? What if the more you give, the more he retreats, not because of who you are, but because of how his psyche works? This is not about playing games. This is not about manipulation. It's about understanding a deeply ingrained psychological mechanism that operates beneath conscious awareness, shaped by evolutionary pressures, childhood imprints, and Carl Jung's most powerful discoveries about the male psyche. This is where modern dating advice fails you, and where stoicism and psychological clarity can begin to liberate you. You've probably heard the cliche, men love the chase. But that's not the full truth. They don't just love the chase. They fall in love with the feeling of lack, the mystery, the distance that makes a woman feel larger than life in his mind. But is that real love or just a projection? Is he drawn to you or to the version of you he invented in your silence? This is the paradox. And the pain millions of women face, the more effort you make to show him you care, the more you expose yourself, the faster he seems to lose interest. But when you pull away, suddenly you're everything you ever wanted, that emotional whiplash. It's not random. It's rooted in the shadow, in the unconscious longing that every man carries, whether he knows it or not. If you've ever experienced this cycle, I want you to know it's not your fault. But the truth is, you do have the power to break it. In this video, I'm going to show you why men fall more in love with women who pull away. And I'll walk you through 6 deeply revealing psychological insights drawn from Carl Jung's I archetypal theories and Stoicism that explain it all. This isn't theory for the sake of theory. These insights could protect you from years of emotional confusion and help you build relationships grounded in truth, not illusion. Forget the superficial tactics. This is about emotional mastery, self-awareness, the art of true feminine power. You're not here to be a tool in someone else's healing journey. You're here to understand yourself so deeply that no man's projection can distract you from your own worth. Are you ready to see how distance creates obsession? Not because you're being cold, because you unknowingly become a mirror to his unconscious wounds. Are you prepared to confront what makes a man chase worship, then ghost the very woman he claimed to love? What you'll learn here will not only explain male behavior, it will reveal the parts of yourself that unknowingly participate in this dynamic too. By the end of this journey, you will not only understand him, you will understand you and how to stop playing a role in someone else's story and finally live your own. If you've ever been tired of being idealized, then disappointed, confused, then ghosted, this is your moment to choose clarity over chaos, to choose grounded love, love stoic. Now take a breath. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover may transform your love life forever. And in part one, we start with the most haunting truth of all. He's not in love with you. He's in love with a fantasy, the projection trap. He's not loving you. He's loving a fantasy. Have you ever found yourself in the middle of an intense romantic connection, one that felt almost mythical, only to watch it dissolve as quickly as it began? The energy was electric, the chemistry undeniable. And for a moment, it felt like he saw straight into your soul. Until he didn't, until he changed, until he disappeared. And you're left wondering, what happened? Where did all that passion go? Why did he seem to adore you one day and become indifferent the next? To answer this, we need to go beyond casual dating advice and dive into the unconscious mind, into the depths. Carl Jung once mapped out in intricate transformative detail. Jung discovered a concept called projection, a psychological process where one person unconsciously casts their inner world onto another. And in romantic dynamics, especially between men and women, this projection becomes a trap, both powerful and painful. When a woman pulls away, especially early in a connection, something almost magical but also deeply deceptive occurs in a man's psyche. Her silence, her absence, or even her calm detachment does not go unnoticed. Instead, it activates a profound psychological mechanism that fills the gap of uncertainty with fantasy. The less he knows about her inner world, the more room he has to imagine. And this is where it gets dangerous, because he doesn't just imagine the best version of her, he imagines an ideal woman, a projection of his own unconscious feminine archetype, what Jung called the Ma. She becomes in his mind not just a woman, but the woman, the mysterious, alluring, spiritually perfect figure that promises to complete him. But this isn't love. It's enchantment. It's obsession born from lack, mystery, and unavailability. And here lies the paradox. The less available you are, the more likely he is to fall into this psychological projection. He's not falling in love with you. He's falling in love with his own dream. This projection is not conscious. He doesn't know he's doing it. He may genuinely believe his feelings are real, and in that moment they are. But they're not grounded in who you are. They're built on fragments, your voice, your gaze, your subtle detachment, all of which he fills in with his based longing. You become a mirror, a screen for him to project all the parts of himself he hasn't yet integrated: tenderness, intuition, mystery, emotional vulnerability. And the more silent you are, the more mystical you appear. The more space you give him to invent his dream. That dream feels sacred to him. It's addictive. It feels like fate. He'll think, I've never met anyone like her, or she's different, or I feel alive in her presence. So But none of this is about you. It's about what you represent in your absence. He conjures a fantasy so powerful that even if you tried to live up to it, you would fail, because no real person can live inside another's projection and remain whole. The moment you start becoming real vulnerable, consistent, emotionally open, he no longer sees them, he sees you. And if he hasn't done the inner work to recognize this pattern, he may begin to retreat. The enchantment breaks, the illusion collapses, and suddenly the woman he claimed to love with all his soul becomes just another person. Sometimes even someone he feels strangely repelled by. This is the first and most common psychological trap women fall into when navigating male attraction. You're adored when you pull away. You're idolized in absence. But as soon as you reveal more of yourself, your emotions, your affection, your presence, his unconscious mind no longer has room to maintain the illusion, and you're left asking, was I ever truly loved? Jungian psychology gives us a haunting answer. No, you weren't, not yet. Because in those early intense stages, he wasn't loving you. He was loving a ghost, his mind created in your image. He was in love with a fantasy, not a woman. That's why the connection felt so intense and so fragile all at once. That's why it felt almost mystical and then turned mundane. That's why he said he'd never felt anything like this before, and then lost interest just as fast, because it wasn't about who you were, it was about what you activated in him. This is not your fault. You didn't ask to be projected onto you. You didn't consciously trigger this process, but understanding it allows you to stop blaming yourself for his withdrawal. It allows you to stop questioning your worth when he disappears. And it gives you the power to stop falling into the cycle of idealization and abandonment now. Ask yourself this: how many times have you mistaken projection for love? How many times did a man seem to fall for you only when you were emotionally unavailable, distant, or hard to read? And how often did that love vanish the moment you got closer, the moment you gave him access to your full presence? This isn't a coincidence, it's a pattern, it's a cycle deeply embedded in the male unconscious. And unless he has done serious inner work, unless he has confronted and mitigated hisma, he will keep repeating it with you, with the next woman, with every woman who stirs something mysterious in him. This is where love, Stoic, becomes essential. Because to see this projection clearly and not be pulled into its trap requires stoicism, it requires emotional neutrality, self-possession, and the strength to witness a man's obsession without being intoxicated by it. Stoicism doesn't mean being cold. It means staying anchored. It means refusing to mistake illusion for intimacy. The truth is, projection feels like destiny. It feels like magic, but it's just chemistry and shadow and unmet needs wrapped in romance. So if you want to be loved for who you really are, not for the idea he built in his mind, you must be willing to recognize the signs. Idealization that comes too quickly. Intensity that feels disproportionate. Fantasies he projects onto you before truly knowing you. These are red flags, not love songs. And here's the hardest truth of all. If you feed this projection by staying mysterious just to hold his interest, you may win his obsession, but lose yourself. You'll be trapped playing a role you never auditioned for, living up to a standard that was never real. You'll start to monitor how open you are, how vulnerable you're allowed to be, just to preserve the illusion. But love without authenticity is not love. And when the mask finally drops, when you can't help but be real, he'll vanish. Not because you did something wrong, but because you were never the person he loved to begin with. You were the canvas he painted what he wanted to see, and now he can't unsee that. It was never really you. If you've ever experienced this, you know the emptiness it leaves behind. But now with this knowledge, you can step out of the trap. You can begin to build connections based not on distance and mystique, but on truth, presence, and mutual self-awareness, love. Stoic means loving from a place of clarity, not craving. It means seeing projection for what it is and choosing not to build your worth on how someone else imagines you. The next time a man falls hard while you pull away, don't be flattered too fast. Be curious. Ask, does he know me, or is he in love with who I'm not? If the answer is the latter, don't try to correct his illusion. Just keep being real, because only the man who can see past hisma, only the man who can love you after the mystery fades, is the man who truly sees you. And that kind of love is rare, but it's real. And it's worth the wait too. Emotional scarcity, the rarity effect that triggers obsession. There's something powerful about what's missing, something irresistible about what we can't quite reach. Have you ever noticed how a man who once seemed disinterested or even indifferent begins to obsess over you the moment you pull your energy back? Why does absence speak louder than presence in the psychology of male attraction? Why does being available, being kind, consistent, emotionally warm so often lead to disinterest or worse, invisibility? It defies logic, but not psychology, and especially not the psychological insights drawn from Carl Jung's work and the emotional clarity we cultivate through Stoicism. When you're always emotionally available, the mind becomes numb to your presence. You become predictable, safe, known. And while those qualities are the foundation of real love, they don't trigger obsession. They don't stimulate the ancient psychological patterns buried deep in the male unconscious. But when you become less available, emotionally, mentally, even energetically, something else begins to take over. Scarcity, rarity, the primitive impulse that tells the human brain if something is hard to get, it must be more valuable. This is not a rational process. This is not about love or compatibility. This is an unconscious mechanism wired into the male brain through centuries of evolutionary development. When a woman becomes less accessible, a man's brain unconsciously increases her perceived value. Her absence becomes proof of worth. This is why he calls more when you stop responding, why he texts more when you go quiet, why he can't stop thinking about you when you stop giving him attention. And yet this isn't personal. It's not about you as a unique individual. It's about what you represent in your absence. A rare, possibly unattainable prize. It's the scarcity principle applied not just to objects or luxury items, but to love and emotional connection. And while this pattern can temporarily increase your perceived value, it doesn't guarantee a real connection. In fact, it often leads to the opposite, because what starts as obsession, driven by scarcity, ends in disappointment when the reality of your presence returns. Jung's concept of projection is deeply tied to this scarcity. Give space for projection. The less someone sees of you, the more room they have to imagine you as perfect and appalled. The more perfect they imagine you, the harder they fall. Until you step forward as a real, complex, emotionally present woman, then the fantasy fades. This is not just about playing hard to get. This is about understanding the deeper psychological programming most men operate from without realizing it. Emotional scarcity triggers the brain's reward system. It activates a primal hunting instinct that values the chase more than the catch. And once the chase is over, once the tension of pursuit disappears, so often does the passion. This isn't cynicism. This is pattern recognition. This is love. Stoic, because only when you understand the game can you choose whether or not you want to play it. And only when you see the unconscious dynamic can you decide if you're going to be a reflection of someone's scarcity fantasy or the anchor of authentic connection. If you're always giving, always initiating, always responding, always showing up, you may unintentionally signal to his unconscious that you're not rare, that you're not worth chasing. Not because of your value, but because of his programming. His brain links challenge with worth, unpredictability with importance. And unless he has done the inner work to deconstruct this belief, he will keep falling for the ones who pull away and losing interest in the ones who don't. That's why Emotionally distant women often receive the most devotion, even if they lack true compatibility. And it's why deeply loving, open-hearted women often find themselves abandoned or taken for granted. But you don't have to betray your nature to protect your heart. You don't have to become cold, manipulative, or withholding. You simply have to become aware of when your consistency is being misread as low value, aware of when your presence is being taken as permission to project, aware of when your emotional generosity is being wasted on someone who only understands love when it's withdrawn. This is where Stoicism becomes your greatest strength. When you embody emotional neutrality, not coldness, but calm, you create the exact kind of mystery that stimulates the male psyche while also remaining true to your inner peace. You don't chase, you don't overgive, you don't force connection, you simply observe, you allow space, you respond rather than react. This subtle shift from availability to intentional presence can change everything. Because when you no longer fear losing someone, when you no longer act from anxiety or scarcity yourself, you stop triggering their unconscious programming. You stop becoming a mirror for their unresolved wounds and instead become a conscious, grounded presence that either draws in someone mature or repels someone still playing subconscious games. And here's the truth. Many women unknowingly weaponize this dynamic. They pull away, not from clarity, but from strategy. They create distance to trigger obsession, not because they're seeking peace, but because they're seeking control. And yes, it can work. Emotional scarcity can make a man fall in love, but not with you, with the feeling he gets in your absence, with the reward he imagines when he wins your attention again, with the thrill of the unknown. This isn't real love. It's a chemical cycle, a psychological addiction, an emotional illusion. And like all illusions, it ends. So the deeper question becomes, are you comfortable being loved more when you're not fully present? Are you willing to be cherished as a fantasy and dropped as a human? If not, then your work is not to become more scarce, but to become more whole. When you operate from wholeness, from the grounded, integrated strength that Love Stoic teaches you, no longer need to manipulate distance to maintain desire. You let people show you who they are. You let absence reveal truth. You let stillness bring clarity. And you stop fearing that your presence will push someone away. Because if your presence is too much, that person was never truly seeing you. They were only responding to their own scarcity programming. Real love isn't scared by presence. It's not bored by consistency. It grows in peace. It deepens in knowing. But most people are still addicted to the high of scarcity. The question is, are you? The moment you stop proving, chasing, or trying to convince someone of your worth is the moment you allow only the truly mature to remain. Everyone else, they fall away, not because you lost them, but because you stopped feeding the illusion. And that right there is your liberation. Now, if you've ever felt yourself giving too much and receiving less loving with your whole heart, and being left with half effort in return, it's not because you're not enough. It's because the emotional economy you're operating in is still ruled by scarcity. And until we all wake up from it, until we recognize that true value comes not from distance, but from depth, we'll keep repeating the cycle, but you don't have to. You can choose to step out of the loop. You can choose to build desire from authenticity, not absence, from awareness, not mystery, and from self-respect, not strategy. If this part of the video has awakened something in you, if you recognize how emotional scarcity has shaped your relationships and you're ready to break free from it, then now is your moment, like this video. If it spoke to your truth, and comment number 1, if you felt seen, let this be your silent yes to your own awakening. And don't forget to subscribe, because in the next part, we're diving into the ancestral myth that still controls male attraction to this day, and why emotional distance awakens something almost spiritual in a man's unconscious mind. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. 3, the unattainable maiden archetype, the myth that awakens male desire. There's something ancient hidden in the modern man's heart, something that doesn't quite make sense unless you look through the lens of the unconscious, of collective memory, and of archetypal energy. Carl Jung didn't just see individuals as isolated minds. He believed each of us is deeply embedded in a vast inherited psychological network of symbols, myths, and roles we unconsciously reenact. And one of the most seductive, powerful, and haunting of those roles is the archetype of the unattainable maiden. A symbolic figure that transcends time, appearing in stories, dreams, and behaviors across cultures. But what does this have to do with why men fall harder when a woman pulls away everything? Because when a woman becomes emotionally distant, unpredictable, or mysteriously aloof, she awakens not just longing, but a mythological pull within a man's unconscious. She becomes more than a person. She becomes an archetype, and that archetype speaks to the deepest recesses of his psyche. She is the feminine figure that promises transformation, wholeness, and spiritual ecstasy, not because of what she does, but because of what she represents. Think about it. Fairy tales, epic love stories, ancient legends, they're all filled with this pattern. A man sets out on a journey not just to find love, but to win the love of a mysterious, distant, often divine woman. She's not fully known. She's barely accessible. Her approval must be earned through effort, sacrifice, and the demonstration of worth. She holds the key to his inner completeness in the unconscious mind. This unattainable maiden becomes the embodiment of the man's own disowned feminine aspects. His emotional world, his intuition, his vulnerability, his capacity for surrender. And when he sees even a hint of this archetype in a real woman, especially one who is emotionally unavailable, he projects all of that mythic power onto her. It's not conscious. He doesn't say, this woman reminds me of an ancient archetype from my collective unconscious. No, what he feels is, she's different, she's magical. I feel whole when I'm near her. I need her. And just like that, the stage is set. You, as the woman who pulled away, who didn't text back, who remained emotionally composed and unchaste, you become a lightning rod for this projection. You become the unattainable maiden. The more you preserve your mystery, not strategically, but naturally, as part of your inner calm and boundary, the more intense this archetypal response becomes. He doesn't know why he's drawn to you. He just is. And the danger is he doesn't see you anymore. He sees a portal, a pathway to some deep inner transformation. He's never consciously articulated, but deeply craves. This is why so many men describe feeling alive, awakened, even spiritually reborn in the presence of certain women. It's not that those women are casting spells. It's that they've triggered a sleeping myth. But here's where it gets dangerous. The unattainable maiden was never meant to be caught. She was never meant to live in the real world. Her power came from her distance, her otherworldliness, her untouchability. So the moment the man feels he's won you, that you're now present, accessible, emotionally transparent, the spell begins to break. Not because you did anything wrong, but because the archetype cannot survive in the light of full reality. And the man who hasn't done the inner work to differentiate his unconscious projections from the real human being before him will often turn cold, disappointed, even confused. He'll say things like, I don't know what happened. I just don't feel the same anymore. Or, I thought you were someone else. What he's really saying is, I mistook you for an archetype. Now I'm meeting the real you, and I don't know how to integrate that. It's tragic, it's painful, and it leaves countless women wondering what they did to cause such a dramatic emotional shift. The truth, nothing. You simply stepped out of the myth. And the man wasn't ready to meet the real woman behind the projection. This is where the work of Love Stoic becomes so essential, because understanding this pattern gives you the power not to be swept up by it. To see when a man is responding to you, not as a full person, but as a symbol, and to gently, quietly let him reveal whether he's capable of truly seeing you or only worshiping his illusion of you, when you feel a man pedestalize you, idealize you, rush to claim emotional depth before time, or trust have developed, that's your signal. That's your moment to slow down, to stay grounded, to stay rooted in who you really are, not who he's projecting onto you. Because if you start playing into the archetype, if you try to preserve the illusion to maintain his obsession, you risk losing the relationship the moment you reveal your human self. And your human self is the only self worth loving. This is where Stoicism helps you stay centered. You don't allow praise to inflate you. You don't allow projection to define you. You receive admiration with detachment. You move forward with calm discernment. You don't get swept into the storm of someone else's awakening unless they've earned the right to truly know you. And here's the most sobering truth. The man who chases the unattainable maiden is often chasing his own inner feminine. He's looking for you to complete him, to activate him, to initiate him into emotional maturity. But that work can never be done through you. It must be done within him. You may be the trigger, but you cannot be the journey. And when you understand this, you stop trying to heal him, fix him, or be his muse. You simply observe whether he's ready to meet you where you are, not in fantasy, but in presence. Because real love isn't built on projection. It's built on integration. It's not a dream. It's a practice. It's not sudden fireworks followed by confusion. It's clarity followed by depth. And very few people, especially men still living through archetypes, are ready for that. But you are, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be reading these words. You wouldn't be searching for a deeper, truer, more conscious way to love and be loved. You've likely been the unattainable maiden before. You've likely seen how men fall for your mystery but struggle with your truth. And now you know why. Now you see the myth that was playing in the background. And now you can choose something different. You can choose to be seen for who you are, not for who you appear to be. In emotional distance, you can choose to love, not as an escape, but as an encounter. You can choose to stop embodying the role of the goddess who saves, awakens, and heals, and instead be the woman who stands in wholeness, who doesn't need to be worshipped, who doesn't chase obsession, but who welcomes real recognition love. Stoic is not about denying connection. It's about deepening it. It's about peeling away illusion, so what remains is solid, lasting, and real. And in that spirit, you don't manipulate distance. You embody self-containment. You don't seduce with silence. You move with discernment. You don't inspire transformation. You observe whether the man before you is willing to do his own inner work. That's the new feminine power, not to be chased, but to be mirrored with equal awareness, not to play hard to get, but to live as hard to misread. And that only happens when you step out of the myth and into your truth, because only then can you know if he's ready to love the woman, not the archetype, not the maiden, not the muse, just you. And that is the most radical, most sacred love of all four. The shadow pattern, his wounds, are attracted to your rejection. There's a dark symmetry to the way people fall in love, especially when it seems irrational, intense, or entirely out of proportion to what's really happening. And nowhere is this more visible than in a man's obsession with a woman who pulls away. Because this isn't just about attraction, chemistry, or even projection anymore. This is about shadow. Carl Jung called the shadow the repressed, denied, often unwanted parts of ourselves. The pieces we hide from the world, and sometimes even from ourselves. And what Jung discovered is that these disowned parts don't stay silent. They find ways to act through us, especially in love, particularly when that love feels just out of reach. When a man is obsessively drawn to a woman who doesn't return his affection or who withdraws her presence, there's a high chance he's not just pursuing her out of desire, but out of pain. Her distance becomes the blade that fits perfectly into a wound he's carried since childhood. He doesn't know this. He can't see it. But what feels like love is often a desperate reenactment of a trauma he hasn't processed. A script written long ago with characters who no longer exist, now projected onto someone new. The more she pulls away, the more urgent his desire becomes. Not because she's the right one, but because her rejection mirrors the very fear he spent his life avoiding. The fear of not being enough. And here's where the shadow comes alive. Deep in every man's unconscious is a fear, sometimes subtle, sometimes severe, that he is unlovable, inadequate, or destined to be left when a woman is warm and available. That fear softens, but when she pulls away, the fear screams, the shadow rises, and suddenly he's no longer trying to win her love. He's trying to rewrite the ending of an old story where he once felt invisible, abandoned, or betrayed. This is why emotionally unavailable women often become the obsession of emotionally wounded men. Her distance activates his need to conquer the very thing that hurt him. Her rejection reopens the emotional wound, and his pursuit becomes less about her and more about healing that wound by winning what he was once denied. But healing doesn't happen through conquest. And this kind of love isn't really love. It's reenactment. It's compulsion. It's shadow behavior masquerading as passion. And when this dynamic is left unchecked, it becomes a cycle that destroys both people. Because eventually, the woman either gives in, confusing obsession with devotion, or sets a boundary which only deepens the man's inner chaos. He can't understand why he feels so much for someone who gives him so little. But it's not her he's feeling, it's himself. Or rather, the parts of himself he hasn't faced, the shadow, is always trying to be seen. And when it doesn't get acknowledged internally, it manifests externally. That's why relationships become mirrors, not just of our dreams, but of our deepest wounds. If a man has never faced the pain of rejection, abandonment, or emotional neglect from childhood, he will be drawn to situations that mirror those exact feelings over and over again until he's forced to confront them. And the woman who triggers those feelings, she becomes both his obsession and his enemy, the one who holds the key to his healing and the one who reminds him of his brokenness. And unless she understands this dynamic, she'll internalize his pain thinking she did something wrong, but she didn't. She just reflected back the part of him he's been running from. This is where love stoic comes in, because to navigate this dynamic with clarity, you need emotional neutrality, boundaries, and self-awareness. You need to recognize when a man's obsession isn't about love, but about his own unhealed story. And you need to know when to step away, not because you don't care, but because you refuse to play the role of his therapist, his mother, or his savior. That's not your job. Your presence is not a treatment for someone else's pain. Your love is not a tool for healing someone else's shadow. And the moment you begin to carry his emotional burden, you'll lose sight of your own truth. But what if you've been here before? What if you've attracted wounded men again and again, men who fall hard when you pull away, but never seem to truly love you once you get close? That's not just coincidence. That's energetic magnetism. That's the law of resonance and action. And it means you may be carrying your own unconscious patterns too. Because just as men project their shadow onto women, women project their own wounded masculine onto men. The part of them that believes they have to fix, rescue, or win approval to be worthy of love. That's not stoicism, that's codependency, dressed as compassion. And the only way out is to look within, to ask, what parts of me still seek validation from someone who can't even validate themselves? What wounds am I trying to heal through relationships that keep me in cycles of pursuit and rejection? These questions are uncomfortable, but they're necessary, because the moment you answer them honestly, you begin to reclaim your power. You stop being a mirror for someone else's pain and start becoming a container for your own healing. You stop chasing, proving, and overfunctioning, and you start embodying calm, grounded self-worth That's the essence of love. Stoic, you don't suppress emotion, you master it. You don't avoid connection, you choose it consciously. And you don't allow yourself to be the emotional playground for someone else's unresolved trauma, because when you love from the shadow, you'll always attract its reflection. But when you love from wholeness, you attract presence, peace, partnership. That doesn't mean you'll never encounter wounded people again. You will, we all do, but you'll recognize them faster. You'll detach sooner. You'll walk away not with resentment, but with wisdom. You'll know that their obsession was never about you, it was about them. And that your rejection was never cruel, it was clarifying. It revealed the wound they'd been carrying all along. And while you can't heal it for them, you also don't have to suffer because of it. If this part of the video resonated with you, if you've ever been the woman who unintentionally triggered a man's obsession, or the one who tried to carry a love that wasn't really about her, then let this be your moment of release. Like this video. If it helped you see through the shadow, comment number 1 below. If you're reclaiming your peace, and subscribe now, because in the next section, we're going even deeper into the sacred mirror effect of individuation, and how a man's love for your distance may actually be a call to love the repressed parts of himself. You won't want to miss it. 5, the individuation cycle. When you become a mirror in the hidden architecture of human attraction, few forces are as profound or as poorly understood as individuation, the lifelong psychological process Carl Jung described as the journey toward wholeness, toward becoming a complete and integrated self. When we fall in love, we rarely recognize how much of that love is not about the other person, but about what they awaken in us, what they reflect back to us, and what they unconsciously symbolize in our own inner worlds. And when a woman pulls away, when she creates distance, silence, or mystery, she inadvertently becomes a powerful mirror for a man's unexplored inner life. That mirror is not blank. It's archetypal, emotional, and reflective of everything he has not yet owned within himself. This is not love in the traditional sense. It is projection-driven desire, spiritual longing in disguise, a soul-level yearning to meet and integrate the repressed feminine within in Jungian terms. This is not a romantic journey. It is a psychological one. When a man encounters a woman who pulls away his unconscious experiences, something extraordinary, he begins to sense his own feminine energy being mirrored outside of him. He sees in her the mystery, softness, intuition, emotional depth, and fluidity that he has not allowed himself to embrace. And the more distant the more vividly these qualities appear in his psyche, she becomes a symbol, a representation of his ma. The internal feminine he has not yet made peace with. This phenomenon creates what feels like love, but is actually the beginning of individuation. And in that moment, she becomes a psychological guide, not because she teaches him anything, but because she activates a dormant process within him. Her emotional distance allows him to experience the hunger for inner balance, and her silence creates the vacuum into which his unconscious pours its most ancient symbols. But this isn't sustainable, because what begins as a profound attraction is not grounded in mutual seeing, but in psychological utility. He isn't loving her. He's using her as a mirror to access the buried parts of himself. This is why so many intense relationships begin with obsession and end with disillusionment. Because once she believes he's found her, once she becomes real, human, present, the illusion fades, the mirror stops reflecting mystery and starts showing reality. And if he hasn't continued the individuation process within, he will unconsciously resent her for no longer being the projection screen for his psyche. And yet here lies the paradox. While she may have initiated this unconscious transformation, she is not responsible for completing it. She cannot carry the burden of his individuation. She cannot be the mirror and the healer and the partner. She can only hold her center, maintain her clarity, and refuse to be defined by his projections. And if she doesn't understand this dynamic, she may find herself trapped, both adored and objectified, both pursued and misunderstood. She may begin to believe that her power lies in remaining distant, mysterious, unavailable. But that belief only delays the collapse, because no real relationship can thrive on projection. No true connection can grow in the soil of illusion. At some point, the woman must become fully visible. And when she does, the man must either rise to meet her as an integrated self or retreat into another cycle of shadow and fantasy. This is the heartbreaking pattern countless women experience. They are loved deeply while they are mysterious, but feel emotionally abandoned once they reveal their full selves. Not because they changed, but because the man never loved them as they were, only as they appeared in the mirror of his unconscious. And yet this doesn't mean distance is a manipulation or a tactic. It means that distance naturally creates reflection when you are not constantly available, not constantly explaining yourself, not constantly performing emotional labor. You allow others to confront themselves. Your stillness becomes a mirror. Your silence becomes a trigger. Your presence becomes a test. And in that space, those around you reveal who they truly are. Not just through what they say, but through how they respond to your absence. This is not about playing games. This is about understanding the sacred power of boundaries. Because boundaries aren't walls. They are mirrors. They show others where their work begins, and when you remain grounded in your own process of individuation, when you are no longer desperately seeking to be seen, chosen, or understood, you create the energetic conditions for conscious relationship. Not projection-based obsession, not need-based attachment, but presence-based connection. And this kind of connection is rare because most people aren't looking for love, they're looking for reflection. They're looking for someone to mirror back their ideal self, their missing pieces, their inner potential. And when they find someone who does that, especially without trying, they fall hard. But what they don't realize is that they are not falling in love with a person. They are falling in love with a possibility, a symbol, a mirror. And when the mirror shifts, so does the love. This is why individuation is so essential, not just for men, but for women. Because when you understand that others are projecting onto you, you stop taking it personally. You stop internalizing their obsession as proof of your value, and you stop interpreting their withdrawal as evidence of your failure. You begin to see love as a mirror, not a measure. You begin to live from wholeness, not hunger. And that changes everything, because when you are psychologically whole, when you've integrated your inner masculine and feminine, you no longer need someone to complete you. You no longer project your animus onto men, and you no longer feel flattered by their projections onto you. You can enjoy love without losing yourself in it. You can hold space for connection without becoming a container for someone else's shadow. And you can discern whether a man is truly seeing you or simply seeing himself through you. That's the power of individuation. It liberates you from being a role, a symbol, a mirror, and allows you to be a person, a full, living, breathing, imperfect human being. And that's the only self that can ever be truly loved. Anything else is a performance. Anything else is projection, and projection always collapses. So the next time someone falls for you while you are quiet, distant, or mysterious, ask yourself, are they in love with me or in love with who they become in my presence? Are they seeing my soul or chasing their own? Are they drawn to who I am or to the reflection of their unfinished work? These questions don't just protect your heart, they refine your perception. They elevate your standards. They bring you back to your center. And When you live from that center, you no longer fear rejection, abandonment, or obsession, because you know that what others do with your presence is their mirror, not your measure. This is love. Stoic, this is emotional sovereignty. This is the path out of projection and into real love. 6, the power of wholeness. Why authentic attraction doesn't rely on games. There's a truth buried beneath every romantic disappointment, every intense obsession, every relationship that burned bright only to collapse under the weight of unmet expectations. It's the truth that real love, lasting connection, and authentic attraction are never born from need, mystery, or manipulation, but from psychological wholeness. And this wholeness, as Jung defined it, comes from the integration of opposites, the feminine and masculine, the light and shadow, the conscious and unconscious within the self. It is not the product of charm, emotional distance, or perfect timing. It is the result of deep inner work. And the paradox that most women must confront is this: the very tactics that generate male obsession, pulling away, creating emotional scarcity, preserving mystery, can spark intense attraction, but they can never sustain love. Because what they activate in the male psyche is not recognition of the woman herself, but activation of his unconscious projections. He sees her as a fantasy, not a reality. He idealizes the version of her that aligns with his unintegrated. He falls for the illusion, not the individual. And so while distance may initially ignite the fire, it is presence, grounded, embodied, conscious presence, that determines whether that fire will become a steady flame or burn out into ash. But this presence can only emerge when you stop relying on performance and start living from your core, when you stop seeing love as something to win and start experiencing it as something to express. This is the essence of love. Stoic, it is not emotional detachment or icy indifference. It is rootedness. It is being so connected to your own center that you no longer twist yourself into the fantasy someone else needs to feel whole. You become whole within yourself. And that wholeness is what shifts everything, because when you are whole, you no longer fall into the trap of playing roles: the unattainable maiden, the mystery, the healer, the muse. You stop being a mirror for someone else's unhealed putts. You stop being the emotional puzzle piece they try to fit into their incomplete narrative. And in that clarity, you begin to see others clearly too. You stop confusing obsession for devotion. You stop mistaking pursuit for presence. You recognize the men who chase intensity but fear intimacy. You recognize the patterns that once seduced you and now no longer move you, because you've seen behind the curtain. You've watched love built on projection collapse into indifference, and you've learned that anything not grounded in truth eventually dissolves. And now finally you're ready to do love differently, to choose connection over chemistry, to prioritize emotional maturity over mystery, to value depth over drama. This doesn't mean you'll never pull away. It means that when you do, it's not to provoke attention, but to preserve your peace. It's not a strategy. It's a boundary. And when a man meets you there in that space of grounded clarity, you'll know he's not being pulled by fantasy. He's being drawn by your essence, not because you're withholding, but because you're whole. That wholeness is magnetic. It doesn't shout, it doesn't chase, it doesn't beg to be seen. It is simply undeniable. And only those who have done their own inner work can recognize it. They won't need to project. They won't need you to be the mystery. They won't run from your depth or recoil from your honesty. They will meet you in the stillness. They will honor the reality of who you are, not the dream they use to escape their own emptiness. And if they can't, you let them go, not with resentment, but with reverence, because you now understand that not everyone is meant to walk with you. Some people were only ever mirrors, and mirrors can reflect, but they cannot stay. So you release them. You release the chase. You release the fear that being seen will make you lose the love, because the love that can't survive your truth is not the love you were born to keep. And the truth is, the more integrated you become, the less tolerance you'll have for games, for hot and cold dynamics, for relationships built on tension instead of tenderness. You'll see clearly that obsession born from distance is not the same as intimacy born from mutual. Seeing one is based in fantasy, the other is rooted in reality. And your path now is, the second you are no longer interested in being loved for what you withhold, you are now committed to being loved for what you are willing to reveal. And that takes courage, because when you reveal your full self, your needs, your feelings, your dreams, you risk rejection. But here's the secret. That risk is the only path to real love, because only in your full expression can someone see you fully. Only in your wholeness can someone offer their own. And that is the sacred union Jung spoke of. Not the merging of two half-formed selves, but the joining of two integrated beings who choose each other from completeness, not from craving. This is the kind of relationship that doesn't burn out after the chase. This is the love that doesn't fade when the distance disappears. This is what happens when you stop using emotional scarcity to attract love and start using emotional integrity to sustain it. Because the moment you become whole is the moment you stop needing others to validate your worth. And in that freedom, you become the kind of woman who doesn't just attract attention. You command respect, not through effort, but through essence, through stillness, through truth. And in this way, love, stoic, is not a method. It is a state of being. A state where love is not a performance, but a presence, not a strategy, but a sacred unfolding. And if you've reached this point in the journey, you're already awakening to that truth. You're no longer seduced by projection. You're no longer bound by rejection. You see the game and you choose not to play it. You choose instead to create a new model of love, one built not on power dynamics, but on presence, not on scarcity, but on soul. And if this message spoke to the deepest part of you, I invite you to stay with this energy, to protect it, to honor it. And if you feel called, show your resonance like this video. If it helped you reclaim your clarity, comment number 1 below. If you're walking the path of wholeness, and subscribe now, because the next chapter will reveal how women also project and how your animus may be shaping your attractions in ways you never realized. The liberation doesn't end here. It only begins now that the veil has been lifted, now that you've seen the hidden architecture beneath male obsession, romantic projection, and the push-pull chaos that leaves so many women confused and heartbroken. The question becomes not how can I get him back, or how do I keep his interest, but rather, how do I stay rooted in what's real? This isn't about using emotional distance as a tactic to manipulate attention. It's about awakening to the psychological patterns that have been operating beneath your relationships for years, perhaps decades, and choosing at last to step outside of them. It's about recognizing that obsession is not love, projection is not truth, and distance is not a substitute for intimacy. You now know what most will never understand, that much of what we call romance is often an unconscious dance between wounded parts of ourselves, seeking completion through another. But love, real love, is born not from the need to be completed, but from the freedom to be fully seen. The man who chases you while you're distant is not always the man who can hold you when you're present. And you, as a woman who has tasted both the thrill of being idolized and the ache of being misunderstood, are now standing at a threshold. You can keep playing the role. You can keep giving just enough mystery to stay on the pedestal, or you can step off of it. You can risk being fully human, fully open, fully real, and yes, that will filter out many who were only there for the fantasy. But what remains, what finds you in your wholeness, will be worthy of the love you've spent a lifetime trying to give. Because the truth is, your essence was never too much. It was never the problem. It was never the reason he left. He left because he never met you. He met the version of you he needed in order to feel something in himself. And now with this clarity, you are free. Free to walk away from the games. Free to break the pattern. Free to choose love. That doesn't vanish when you stop performing. And when you choose that, when you commit to seeing and being seen, you become part of a quieter revolution, a movement not of dating strategies or emotional tricks, but of women who are done being mirrors and ready finally to be met